Welcome back to another Alvado video. Now in today's video, what I'm going to try and do is present to you as much information about Set 8 as possible, and hopefully you leave this video, learning a thing or two. The expectation for this video is not for you to learn 10 or 20 more comps just based on what I'm showing you, but the hope is that you'll learn maybe 1 or 2 more comps that complements your playstyle. And the other takeaway that I want you to have is that maybe through the course of Set 8, you have been learning some bad habits, and hopefully the information that I'll present to you in this video can help you break some of these bad habits. Now there are, hundreds of comp guides on basically every single comp. I have some comp guides on my TikTok. I have some, I have videos of me watching, basically every single comp that I'm about to show you here on my YouTube. So this isn't like a comp guide. It's just basically an all-encompassing, video about everything, every single one of my thoughts based on Set 8 from, stuff that I've learned. And also, there's only 1 week left. So hopefully, the goal for this video is that you're able to achieve an end of set goal that you might have. Now, before I talk about this tier list, this is what I'm going to talk about last. What I'm going to do first is go through each and every single one of my TikToks that I've made for every single cost. You can see this is best 1 cost hero augments. I have 2 costs, 3 costs, 4 costs, and 5 costs. And essentially each TikTok kind of goes through this guide. So this is like my idea of how you would play the Lux hero augment, and I had Shojin JG Gunblade as the itemization. Now after looking at the items and understanding more about the build, Blue Buff plus Rabadons is basically the highest win rate percentage item combination that you could go for. And then after these items, you can add any single one of these items on top of that. That's essentially how you would try and play Lux carry. I've seen people where they go for Lux 3 if they have like, an excess of Luxes, and then they keep Lux for the entirety of the game. And then I've seen other people, play a sort of fast 8 playstyle after just hitting Lux 2 and some strong items. And yeah, and then they just try and win the game from just making like a capped level 8, capped level 9 board. So for the next one, Lulu reroll, it's pretty self-explanatory. These items are fine. As far as this build, I think this is like a really strong build that you can attempt to reroll, but some issues that might happen is maybe you don't always get, Poppy 3, Wukong 3. Maybe you have to go for like a mascot frontline. I've played lines where I have Lulu 3, Nasus 3, Galio 3, and then you can basically still play that line. You just need to find a way to add in 1 more Gadgettine if you want to do that. But these items for the most part are generally good. Talon carry, same. These items are basically, essentially what you're going for, but Talon can hold, a variety of items. At the end of the day, as long as you have like really strong items, this comp will like always excel. Most of the time you want to add in, you'll add in LeBlanc for the Spell Slinger and the admin, but other than that, these 4 units are core. Like I said, you probably want to add in LeBlanc at level 5, and then from there, you just look to add in, extra Renegades, extra Ox Forces, just like upgraded units, all that. Gangplank. Gangplank is often utilized as like a mana item holder for early game AP champions. But if you are playing around the Gangplank carry, you actually don't want to make Blue Buff or Shojin or anything like that. You really just want to build him full damage, because what ends up happening is he takes damage, he deals damage, and then he heals up the damage that he's dealt, and then he keeps on gaining mana through taking damage. You don't actually need a mana item. Also, what I have built here is Gangplank in this sort of like Supers Duelist reroll, but you also can just play Gangplank in the Yuumi comp, and that is, a really effective way and probably the most common way of playing Gangplank. This is the Poppy carry. This is just like 2 different lines that you can play, both of them very strong. You can choose to play Bigger, Better, Buckler, and Draven. You can choose to play it in Lulu reroll. These are probably like the easiest ways to play the comp, but at the end of the day, Bigger, Better, Buckler is just really strong, and you can play like a bunch of different lines. You can even just play like 2 Poppy 2s, and that could be your front line to carry you to level 8, and then you could play like any sort of AD, AP comp, whatever you want. These are just like the best. These are like the easiest ones that, come to mind if you are attempting to reroll units alongside Poppy. Silas reroll, I have, you know, some different items for this. So this is the item build that I show in the comp. But after looking at his itemization, I mean, I don't know exactly why I even chose these items in the first place. I haven't really played the build too much. But he can almost utilize like any single tank item. It like doesn't even matter. So these aren't like item trios. This is basically just saying you can utilize any combination of these items and it's fine. As long as you just hit Silas 3 in like a reasonable time, then you should be good to go. And then I have the build with, you know, vertical Anima Squad. I think that's probably the easiest way to play it because you can very naturally just reroll Silas and Nasus. And then all you do is find like one Jinx, Riven, or Vayne in the early game, and you can start stacking up those Anima Squad stacks really early. Also, you know, Silas gets, he benefits from having more HP, so you want those Anima Squad stacks. And it makes it really easy to just tap around like 3-item 2-star Misfortune. So Renekton carry, this one came out, like, this one was popular right after I had posted this video, so I wasn't too sure on like what the itemization would be. BT and Titans are really strong. I have, you know, the newly, I think this is probably the best build right here, BT Titans QSS. You basically just go for Renekton 3 and then you play like Vertical Brawler, and then you basically play it kind of like Jax, but instead of 3-star Jax, you have 3-star Renekton, and then you look to carry Soraka, but depending on what your items are, you can carry, you know, essentially anything. You just want vertical brawlers. And then these 3 items are, you know, items that you can make that are slammable. He gets attack speed based on his max HP. So Warmogs not only gives him like a ridiculous amount of health, especially if you have like 6 or 8 brawler, but it also gives him, you know, a massive amount of attack speed. Because like I said, he gets attack speed for every amount of like missing health he has or something like that. And then Ginsu and Shiv are like also just really strong items because he does magic damage and he's attacking really fast. But yeah, this is probably what you want to go for every game. And if you have to swap out, you know, like BT or QSS for any of these items because you have to make what you have to make, then, you know, that's just what you gotta do. And then that's basically it for the 1-star comp guide. These are like pretty self-explanatory. Okay, so here we are looking at the 2 costs. If you haven't figured it out already, essentially each one of these videos is just me covering what I believe to be the best hero augments in the game for each and every cost, and then telling you how to play around them. So I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt and say that you probably already know how to play a lot of these. So I'm only going to touch on very small things or things that I might have, you know, like messed up in some of these like videos now that I have more information. So pretty simple Camille carry. You basically play all these units. Last item for Camille is either Titans or Last Whisper. Draven carry. I feel like a lot of people know how to play Draven. I think a lot of these items make sense. There's not really too much to touch on for Draven here. Ezreal carry definitely got significantly weaker after, you know, a couple touches to the comps. They nerfed Vi, they nerfed Ezreal, they nerfed the Ezreal carry. But if you are going to play this build, and if you are in a spot to play this build, this is essentially how you would play it. Any other variation is probably not that good. Last item on Ezreal is either like some form of crit item or Giant Slayer. And then most of the time, I think you want to stack Vi, because I think Vi is just a better standalone tank than Lee Sin or Malphite. As far as Yuumi goes, again, I feel like people probably already know how to play Yuumi, but there are some common misconceptions. First of all, I mean, I'm not talking about Nilah here because this is only the 2 costs, but you can play Malphite and Lee Sin carry hero augments in this comp. They're not terrible. But if you have enough rerolls and you see Yuumi, even though Yuumi is the face of this comp, Rell is, like, both of Rell's augments I would consider to be significantly better than Yuumi. If you have Rell carry, then you should put items on Rell instead of Nilah. If you have Rell support, which is what you should go for, Channeled Ferromancy is probably the best augment that you can get for this comp, and it is better than Predatory Precision, I promise you. You should still put your items on Nilah in that case, and then, you know, leftover items go on Yuumi, but yeah, prioritize, you know, Nilah items first. You want Redemption, you want Spark, and then Access Tiers and Rods can go into Yuumi items. now we get to, some of the more supportive builds. If you like to play Kai'Sa and you don't know how many different variations you can play of it, Ezreal support, I'm sure a lot of people have played this line where you play Ezreal support and then you just play Kai'Sa. Lee Sin carry, this was the new build that got made because of the rework to Lee Sin's carry hero augment. And then it was sort of bugged, so it was like very powerful. They got rid of the bug. It's still very strong, but this is like how you would play the comp. There's not really too much to say about it here. And then each and every single one of these augments are very good to take. They're just not very, specific builds that you would play around them. If you're playing boxing lessons, you can play vertical brawlers, you can play AD, sometimes you can play AP and like a 4 brawler, 4 heart build or something. Lee Sin is really good for AD comps because he gives your whole team attack speed. Endless Pizza is just a very broken effect, just being able to provide anti-heal is very strong, and then Ruthless Blades giving your whole team crit can make certain builds very possible. I've played Ruthless Blades in a Samira carry where I had, 2 Ace active, but it was still worth it because giving your Samira 75% crit chance is better than having the Ace trait active anyways. I've played Draven in like Talia builds before where I just play JG plus Hodge plus mana item, Talia, and since there's so much crit, it makes her do like that much more damage. Ruthless Blades is like extremely flexible, you can play it in a lot of things. And then the rest of this stuff is just very basic. This isn't really too good anymore, but you can still play the line. This also isn't too good anymore, but you can still play the line. Okay, now we're looking at 3 costs, and again, this video is not for you to be able to consume every single one of these bits of information and try and utilize them in your game. It's just to maybe give you some sort of consideration on something that you might be able to play. And if you need help with playing certain lines, then I'd be happy to help you. I have a Discord. I'll link it in the description. And if you're trying to, achieve an end of set goal, then yeah, hit me up in there and I can help you figure out a better game plan for how you should be playing the game. I also have lots of other friendly people in there that also will be willing to help you. So here we can look at Vayne carry again. A lot of the very self-explanatory stuff I'm going to not take that much time on, but this I need some people to understand. So this is probably like the default line if you have Vayne carry. If you're able to get this augment on 2-1, which is possible, then this is what you should default to. Now there are several different lines you can play with this, and sometimes you have an Anima Squad opener and you get this augment on 3-2. Sometimes you can even get this augment on 4-2, and you're already like committed to playing very specific lines. Maybe you're playing Duelist and like this is the best thing for you. You can play it in in all of Anima Squad, Duelist, and Recon, but Recon is easily the strongest way to build it. And so here we have you want IE if you're playing it in Anima, and you want IE if you're playing it in Duelist. Now again, you still want IE if you're playing it in Recon, unless you have 4. Then you don't need IE. But the thing is, you might as well just drop Ashe and play Kai'Sa and have IE, especially if you already have, the components for it made. You're not just gonna sit there and like sit on a glove and a sword and not slam IE because it's not as good in 4 Recon. You're just gonna drop Ashe and you're just gonna play 3 Recon. And then of course, other items, this is like the most common item combination I see. Shojin or like Vayne with the carry hero augment turns Vayne into an AP cat or into an AD caster. So you really want Shojin. Now a lot of people think blue buff is better. Blue buff makes a little bit more sense on paper because it allows Vayne to insta-cast, and then if you're getting kills, you get extra mana through it that way. But the thing that you're not realizing is that Shojin is part built with a sword, so the 10 AD actually matters, and Shojin procs off of how many autos you do, but for some reason Vayne's cast counts as an auto, so it actually makes Shojin like make a lot more sense. So blue buff is just inferior to Shojin. Now it's not like terrible if you have to build blue buff because you need the sword for IE and Gunblade or something, then you can go ahead and make blue buff, it's fine. You also can, you know, use things like Guard Breaker. You can see you can do Giant Slayer, you can do Deathblade, whatever. But you probably want Shojin and IE on every single Vayne build. Okay, so Riven carry, this is one of my personal favorites, but I honestly don't think it is that strong. It's only really good because if you can get this on 2-1, then you have very clear direction, and, you know, you get a Riven. So you're only really taking it if you have either an item for Riven or you have like an Anima Squad opener. And then if you have an Anima Squad opener and you're strong, then you're getting stacks throughout the entirety of the game, which just makes Riven like that much stronger, and it just makes it super easy to get to this spot where you can go for Riven 3. But if you're trying to play around this augment on 3-2 or 4-2, it's only ever good if you're already playing from, you know, like a high roll like Anima Squad spot. Rammus and Cho'Gath you can play in basically any single comp. Yeah, this is self-explanatory. Kaisa carry. Now again, I have, you know, Rammus and Cho'Gath here because I think in a lot of situations, the Rammus and Cho'Gath hero augments are better than the Kaisa carry hero augments, but the Kaisa carry isn't too bad. And yeah, Ginsu, Gunblade, Guardbreaker is really strong. Shiv is always a good option. If you don't have 4 recon, then you need JG. You probably would play JG outside of, you know, Gunblade, but then you need to find healing in some other fashion. You don't need to have Gunblade. You can play, you know, like I said, you can play Shiv. But you probably want some sort of healing, so either Thrill or Celestial Blessing, or, you know, just making sure you prioritize frontline. And then here we go to the Nilah. So I think they actually recently buffed both of these. So they're both very strong. If you're playing in a lobby where you think a lot of people are going to be able to hit level 8 and level 9, then the support one is probably better because this comp, you know, gets screwed over by, you know, team-wide CCs. So if a lot of people are being able to hit Janna, Urgot, you know, Fiddlesticks, you need to make sure that your team can't get CC'd, so that one's probably better. But if you're playing, you know, Yuumi in a lobby where a lot of people are re-rolling, there's not many comps that you think are going to be able to go fast 9, then the carry augment, I'm pretty sure, is just better in every situation, because not only are you always duplicating really powerful items, you literally turn Nilah into a very strong carry. Like the comp is so strong because of Nilah's like healing and damage dealing abilities in the first place. But if you can get a Nilah 3, then you almost don't even need like Yuumi items anyways, and she will just like blow up front lines and then be too tanky and be too strong to basically like lose any fight. Here we have 2 very strong support options if you're trying to flex around AD. If you're looking at your hero augments and you don't want to get locked into a specific tree, or you don't want to have to be playing around like a specific unit that requires other units, then you can just choose to play, you know, Senna support, Vayne support. Both of them are really strong, where yes, you're going to probably have to have these units on your board to get, you know, the maximum value out of the carry. But most of the time they can just be slotted in as a +1, and they don't actually need you to have, you know, multiple other units for them to make sense. Senna is the one where adjacent units get AD, and they also recently changed this, so you can't do double Senna, whereas before you could have 2 Sennas, both adjacent to 1 unit, and then you would get 2 times the amount of AD. It's only strongest Senna now, so make sure you understand that. And then Vayne is the one that gives your, you know, gives you a free Edge of Night, so it's like always pretty strong. And then this is Sleepy Time and Mirror Image. These are both really strong in honestly any comp, but they're very powerful in AP comps because most of the time you're going to have some form of MR Shred. Both of these units do a lot of AP damage, and both of these units are often like units that you want to be playing in AP lines. If you're playing any sort of Gadgettine line, or if you're just playing around any sort of board that includes Echo, and just having an extra Zoe is like completely fine. Prankster is like a pretty strong trait. Zoe also provides support like damage amp and stuff like that. LeBlanc is just really good single target DPS. and getting the mirror image online where you can, you know, duplicate the Syndras, duplicate the Fiddlesticks, duplicate the Urgots. Of course, you can do that in any sort of line, but if you're playing an AD line, there's a good chance you don't really want LeBlanc on your board, whereas if you're playing around an AP line, then you almost always want LeBlanc on your board. And then just don't choose Vel'Koz, pretty self-explanatory. Okay, so now we're at the 4-cost hero augments. This one is a little different because, you know, when you start getting into the 4 and 5-cost trees, you can't really depend on, you know, building your comp around this sort of thing, because you can't, it's very rare to get 4-cost hero augment on 3-2. And even if you know that the final augment is going to be a hero augment, it always can be 3-3-3, it always could be 5-5-5. Even if it's like 3-3-4, then sometimes you can't guarantee something. So yeah, this stuff is like basically how you should be playing around certain things, but there aren't that many, you know, variations of builds for stuff like this. Samira, just very popular unit. Samira support is insane because you don't actually have to be carrying Samira, and it just gives your whole team attack speed. Samira carry also very strong, but it kind of locks you into playing around, you know, itemizing Samira instead of other units. Miss Fortune, again, this is only like a line that you would play if you're playing around Anima Squad, or if you just have, you know, an MF2 like very early and you have like perfect items for Miss Fortune. Bel'Veth carry, this one I kind of want to talk about because I just have like the Aegis Bel'Veth here that was really popular during that one meta like 2 patches ago. But and I just gave Bel'Veth these items, but if I'm being honest, it was just really hard deciding which items are good for Bel'Veth. This item combination has the highest stats as an item trio on Tactics.Tools. But Bel'Veth, these aren't item trios here. These two are item trios in my opinion. These are just other items that you can play and utilize. At the end of the day, Bel'Veth is an extremely flexible carry. She can hold a variety of items. I think you almost always want Last Whisper. You want some sort of defensive item, whether it be like QSS or some sort of sustained item like Bloodthirster. Like QSS, BT, Titans, Hodge, RFC, Gunblade, Edge of Night, like all those qualify as like defensive items. And then you want one sort of like damage amplification item. I think Guardbreaker is really strong just because it gives so many stats. Giant Slayer, very powerful option. Runans, Titans is like can kind of be considered as a damage item. And then of course, Bel'Veth is not only very flexible with the items that she can hold, but she's also very flexible with the emblems that she can hold. There's lots of builds where if you want to utilize Recon Spat just to make sure that you don't have to play Ashe on your final board when you're playing around a Kai'Sa comp, it's very frequently given to Bel'Veth. Also, item combinations where Recon is one of the item trios is like very high in the, you know, top 4% stats. So yeah, Recon Bel'Veth very strong. And then of course, like if you don't know who you should put a +1 Ox Force or Duelist on, you can always count on Bel'Veth to hold those emblems very well. But yeah, as far as comp goes, I mean, extremely flexible. Most of the time you don't end up ending with Samira unless you, ending with Bel'Veth unless you have, you know, Bel'Veth carry hero augment or like threat level max or something. But if you are going to play around it, this is like a common core of 4 units that you can play. Aesol carry, honestly, probably just don't even play this. It's not that strong. Well, you would only consider playing this if you had like a really early Aesol 2, or you had like threat level max or something, and you had like a bunch of AP items. Talia carry is becoming a lot more popular. I think the carry is slightly better than the support just because Talia is one of those units where you really need to make sure that she's one-shotting things. Even if she's not one-shotting everything, you know, if at least she's one-shotting the support units, she's dealing like a massive chunk of damage to the front line. It's like becomes, you know, increasingly important that she's able to like at least get rid of some, you know, targets, because if she's just not able to kill anything, most of the time your front line ends up getting run over and you don't end up like the comp falls apart very easily if you don't have a lot of things going for you. And just having more damage amp, you know, helps that a lot. The support augment obviously very strong as well. As far as Viego goes, it's pretty well understood that the support one is slightly better, but it does make it so that you want to build him differently. Like the carry augment gives him, you know, more damage, and then it gives him it gives him AP and then it gives him more damage amp. Support augment gives him and, you know, the rest of your team Omnivamp. This one's better because you often have some form of a dual carry when you're playing around Viego, whether it be like Bel'Veth or Aphelios or just someone that you're giving a Renegade spat to, so maybe like Misfortune or whatever. But just keep in mind that, you know, the items that you should be using, you know, differ depending on which one you want, because you don't necessarily need a healing item if you're playing around the support. It's always fine. Most of the time you end up just picking this for the extra Viego anyways, but yeah, just keep that in mind. Also, these units are always on every single Viego board. Zed, this comp got significantly worse. Zed as a unit is very strong, and you can play him as like an AD carry in like certain lines, but he is also just kind of inconsistent sometimes. So he's not like the best carry, but yeah, if you're playing around Laser Core line, you normally just play this +1. They recently buffed Hodge. QSS is a very strong item on him, and you almost always need Edge of Night when you're playing around Zed. I think this item trio is very strong, but at the end of the day, like, he uses a lot of items very well as well. Titans is very good. Runens is very good. You just don't know what to go for, and you just want something that you're guaranteed going to get some amount of value from. Supersize Zac is insane. Chrono Breaker Echo is really good. Both of the Sejuani augments are very strong. If you're playing around AP, then Infuse is something that I like to take. You know, it gives your whole team AP. If you're playing like Taliyah, Soraka duo carry or something like that, and this is often like a very strong augment, because most of the time you have lots of support units that require extra mana. You have like basically your entire board has some form of usefulness, so just giving AP to everyone is very strong. And then support ASOL is like decent just because it's, you know, it provides CC, but again, you have to have ASOL on your board. So you normally only want to pick this one if you're playing around, you know, threats, or if you just don't have anti-heal and you think anti-heal is very important. And then just do not pick any of these. Zac support where he tosses the units just sucks. Echo carry is just never, like, even if you can make it work, it's just never worth it. You're investing too much into this unit where if you're choosing Echo carry, someone else is choosing Samira support, and they're giving their entire team like 20% attack speed or more, and you're making your Echo do slightly more damage. Like, it's just not worth it. Okay, and here we are with the 5 cost, the final one. Again, I'm probably just going to go through these very quickly because most of the time you can't even carry these units anyways. They're almost always used for their support purposes, which is why you can see the first slide is essentially just me going over the best options for AP flex. Fiddle support is very strong. You can always just give the extra AP to that the Fiddlesticks is gaining to some of your AP carries. You can just put it next to Misfortune. You can put it next to Taliyah. You can put it next to Soraka. It's very strong. You can put them next. If you have 2 Fiddlesticks, you can put them next to each other. They both give each other AP. Fiddlesticks, yeah, it's just, I mean, he's also just a really strong unit in general, so just getting Fiddlesticks is good enough. Nunu support gives your whole team AP over time. It's just very strong in any like AP comp. Nunu is also very often, you know, what you want if you're going to cap your board around. You're going to cap your board around AP, or if you're playing around like some form of gadgeting line, then Nunu is always something that you want to be fielding. And then Syndra support, also giving your team lots of AP. This one's a little bit riskier because you need to invest gold into your bench if you want to get the AP. So it often like either inhibits you from going level 9, or if you are going to try and go level 9, you like have to, it's going to take a lot longer because like I said, yeah, like you have to be buying units to be on your bench because that's how the augment works. Here are the best augments for AD flex. Either Aphelios augment is really strong. Just the fact that it gives you an Aphelios is just good enough most of the time, so it almost doesn't matter which one. There's one that shreds armor. That one is like really strong if you don't have Last Whisper. If you have Last Whisper already, then probably just go for the other one if you have the option. And then Urgot support, just giving every unit surrounding Urgot attack speed is just very strong because obviously, you know, attack speed scales really well with AD lines. I think that some 5 costs are unacceptable to take, but in cases where you really need the vertical traits to make your board that much stronger, I think some of these are acceptable to take. Like obviously Nunu and like Leona and Mordekaiser can be taken in a lot of situations, but they become that much better if you really need the Leona for 6 Renegade, if you need Janna for 8 Spellslinger, even if it's like Sunny Janna or something like that, can be fine. Nunu, if you need 5 Gadgetzine, you can almost always just go for the Nunu because you really want that 5 Gadgetzine spike. Same with Mordekaiser. If you need Mordekaiser to hit 7 or 9 Laser Core, then you obviously want to be looking for Mordekaiser, and it almost doesn't matter which augment you're taking. You're just taking the augment for the unit. I'm pretty sure everyone knows this, but obviously, yeah, you're going fast 9. Shiny is just insane. If you don't know what to take and you're just trying to get something that is at least going to give you some amount of benefits, then both of these augments are very good. Mordekaiser at the start of combat shreds opponent's armor and MR, and then Leona just makes it so that your whole team takes less damage. So if you just don't know what to look for and you're just you just want something, then you can always just pick those. And then, yeah, so Janna carry, Syndra carry, Fiddle carry, and Mordekaiser carry are all inferior to their support augments. So you probably should just never take them. There's a good chance that with 4 rerolls, if you really need Janna, you're probably fielding units that are going to allow you to hit the other Janna, not the carry Janna. So yeah, you basically should just never take any of these. They're just not that good. Okay, so now that we looked at all the variations of how you can consider playing around hero augments, I want to talk a little bit of how you should be formulating a game plan and how strong specific comps are in the last week of set 8. So I have some explaining to do with how this, tier list is set up, because you might be confused about why certain things are where. Like if I were to be considering this LeBlanc as the 4 or 6 admin lines, which is what I am, then this should realistically be up here in S tier, because if you are able to get, on ally death admins that give AP, that give gold, that give stacking HP, some of those admin combinations are amongst, the most broken in the game. And if you have those, then, you can consider that to be the best comp that you can achieve. So this tier list is not about how strong specific comps are. It's about how strong they are in relation to how consistently you can play them. Because if you are going to be formulating a game plan, you need to understand how frequently you're going to be playing specific comps. And something like admin, there's going to be games where you either don't get the admin that you're looking for, or you do get the admin that you're looking for, but you don't have these specific items to play the comp. So that already cuts out, a lot of the games that you can try and play this admin line. But comps like Yuumi, Kai'Sa, and Samira, every single one of these comps all has, a variety of hero augments that you can choose from. They're all strong, and the comps in general are just very powerful. They have S tier strength while also having S tier flexibility. So that's why comps like these are in the top. And then so for the second row, this is basically your admin line. This is Viego, this is Taliyah, pretty self-explanatory. This set represents the Gadgetzine set line, where of course you don't have to be playing around set if you get the Gadgetzine +1, but that is what most people commonly play it with, because if you get a Gadgetzine crest on a set and you get 5 Gadgetzine in and you give him 3 items, he basically becomes unkillable. But of course that requires a lot of things to go your way. I wouldn't even consider playing the comp if I don't even have the +1 Gadgetzine. So yeah, that's exactly why it's in B, because it is easily one of the strongest caps in the whole game. But the issue is that it requires too much setup to be able to play consistently. Here's Miss Fortune, and then this Lulu kind of represents all encompassing carry hero augments. These comps that require you to have the hero augment in order for it to make sense to play the comp. But if you do have the specific line, then it can be very strong. So yeah, so like this basically includes Poppy, it includes Vayne, it includes like Camille, it includes like Talon, like a lot of the one cost reroll, but then also, you know, those comps that transform units into like significantly stronger units. Bel'Veth is here because even though Bel'Veth is very strong if you have either Back for Blood or Threat Level Max, if you don't have one of those things, then you probably are just putting items on Bel'Veth to swap them over to like some form of Samira or Aphelios later on anyways. So this Bel'Veth doesn't represent, you know, Bel'Veth carry. It like kind of represents Bel'Veth carry when you're playing around like threat, like when you're trying to cap around Bel'Veth carry instead of just like utilizing Bel'Veth as an item holder. This is like Jax or Brawlers. This is Duelists. This is, you know, like Heartlines. Like kind of consider Cleansing Safeguard in here, but at the same time, Cleansing Safeguard's kind of where this Poppy is because it's like reworks exactly how you know, think about playing comps. This line also extremely powerful. Like it's so easy to win games with, you know, Soraka when you have the right setup, when you have enough frontline, when you have right items, when you have the right admin. But of course, you have to have all of those things in order for it to be strong. This represents Laser Core and this represents Draven. So at the end of the day, basically just look at this. This represents almost every single comp that you can play in the game. If it's not in here, then there's a good chance that you probably should not be playing it and you should like reconsider how you're thinking about the game. And yeah, so I want you to look at every single one of these things and think about, okay, if I were to play 100 games, how many games of each one of these comps am I going to play if I'm trying to play as flexibly as possible? So my argument is that if you are both flexing like AP and AD and you're willing to play every single comp in the game because you understand how to play every single comp in the game, then I would say that you're playing about 20 games of Yuumi, 20 games of Kai'Sa, 20 games of Samira. That leaves you with 60 out of 100 games with just these three comps, or like variations of these comps. Samira, of course, obviously counts as like Aphelios as well, and like capped legendary almost. And then you would probably play like 10 of each of these games, or like maybe 20 in total for all three of these. So now you have 60 games here, you have plus 20 games here, so you have 80 games. And then you'd probably play a combination of like 10 games throughout these B tier comps. And then in the C tier comps, you'd play probably about like 5 to 7 or like 5 to 8. And then the remaining games would be a combination of like these comps down here. Now, this might not be 100% correct, but obviously it's just like an easy way to understand how you should be, you know, playing games. Like I said, if I'm going to be playing 100 games, about 60, 20, 10, you know, like 8, and then like 2 or like 3. So yeah, that's just something to consider. Like I said, if you don't want to learn how to play Kai'Sa because you're thinking too many people can test Kai'Sa, I'm not very good at playing the line. Okay, well, if you play AD, then maybe consider learning, you know, the Bel'Veth line, the Duelist line, the Samira line, and the Draven line or something. Like pick a combination of like lines that make sense to you, and then try and learn, like maybe you don't know how to play the Duelist line very well. Maybe just study up on the Duelist line very slightly so that instead of every game where you're only trying to play Samira and Draven, you actually at least have, you know, one other line that you know how to play. Draven is down here, by the way, because like Draven I think is just one of the most inferior reroll augments, and I think so many people get baited into playing Draven because they are trying to play around, you know, like a Samira or Bel'Veth line. And then whenever they're shown like 2 cost, 2 cost, 2 cost, they just see Draven and they're like, okay, I'm just going to snap click Draven and try and play Draven when they don't even have the correct spot to play it. Also, I don't even think the comp is that strong. I've been in so many lobbies where I'm playing Yuumi and I am basically hitting about as much as the Draven player. If not, the Draven player is high rolling harder than me and I'm still steamrolling the Draven player. Like Draven requires way too much to stabilize, and it also requires you to sack your units in the early and mid game, and you're giving the entire lobby extra HP to work with. So it's very like hard to like actually not only win with Draven, but get to a spot where you can even, you know, like stabilize when everyone else is, you know, like getting some slack because you're killing off 2 of your units with mech. So yeah, that's kind of my comprehensive guide. Again, if you want more help with trying to understand how to climb in set 8, then join my Discord. Hopefully you learned something from this video. Like the video if you liked it, and I'll see you in the next one.